Hello, BookTube. We're in my library tour, and we've gone through all the normal shelves, almost all of them. The Penguins haven't been done. They're going to have to wait. But we get to the end of the library tour, and it was romances. And I hadn't thought of that. I had originally thought to just skip this whole bookcase because it's hundreds and hundreds of romances. And I wasn't sure how much appeal that would be. And there's less appeal, of course, but quite a few of you have very, very kindly emailed and said, it's your library. We want all of it, whether we're directly interested in it or not. Doesn't matter. And also, I got emails from quite a few people, aside from just Sarah at Steeped in Books, saying that they'd love to see the romances and hear me talk about them. So, since it makes me feel good as well, and since I like a pick-me-up, I thought we'd just continue. We'll just do some more of these Regency romances. And I'm talking about the old-style Signet Regency romances, for those of you who might be joining this in this video. God knows what you make of this if you're joining it at this video. But I'm talking about these things. These old, let's get you a good example. These things. These old things from the late 70s all through the 80s and the early 90s, maybe even later into the 90s. This is a Signet Regency romance, but there are also, there's a Zebra. They look exactly the same. They're set up to look exactly the same. There's Zebra. This is Warner Books. But they're all set up to look very similar, and they are strictly patterned after Pride and Prejudice by way of Georgette Heyer. So you have wealthy members of the landed English gentry during the Regency period. Usually the plots amount to Tempest in Teapots. And there's always a happy ending, a resoundingly happy ending, where the woman and the male and female main characters realize at the end of the book that they love each other. And the unspoken, unwritten final act will be their marriage once the book is over. These things had a heyday. You're guaranteed of nothing really soiling or improper and nothing explicit, mostly, in these books. It is a very rare exception. And that differentiates them from the Regency romances that are still written today. The Regency romances are still a booming subgenre of the romances. In fact, Sarah at Steeped in Books would probably check this or double check, but I think that Regency romances are still the most popular subcategory of romances, with cowboys and contemporary and paranormal and Viking and Scottish Highlander. I think Regency still outdo them all. And you might think that would mean that I would read them all, and I do read a huge amount of modern Regency romances, but they're very different things. Only one glance will show you. This is an old-style Regency romance, and this is a new-style Regency romance. Now, as you can see, the Duke's Daughter, this one is The Sins of Viscount Sutherland, but I am positive that I don't need to look even past these first rows. Yeah, there we go. There is another Viscount. See? So we're still dealing with the same ranks of English nobility. We're still dealing with the same subjects, but you would never see that costume on an old-style Regency cover. And if you'd never see that, prepare yourselves. That is Viscount Sutherland. And no man looked like that in the Regency period. Plain and simple. And even if by some freakish chance they did, they would have been a blacksmith. So, of course, they wouldn't have been dressed like this, and they wouldn't have had any romances. But even if they had looked like that, no Regency cover would have shown these people basically naked. And that follows suit in the books themselves, which are incredibly more sexually explicit. And I'm not being a prude about it. That can be very, very entertaining. But these older style Regency romances have more playfulness about them, and less in the way of, in my experience, less in the way of bad writing. although the Regency writers, a lot of the Regency writers who are doing books today, do really clever, funny, interesting books. So I've praised a lot of them on this channel. It's just a completely different kind of thing, that's all. And I thought we'd go through, the reason that I bring it up is because I have hundreds and hundreds of these old-style Signet Regency romances. They are a huge sweet tooth of mine. They are the ultimate palate cleanser for me. I don't know what you use. Murder mysteries, I had an old friend who used the most disposable murder mysteries imaginable as a palate cleanser from the stuff he had to read all day long. And I've known other people who did other things. It's it's up to each of us. For me, these are perfect. It's an hour's read. It's guaranteed a happy ending. There's guaranteed to be a comfortable amount of predictability, and that will throw the emphasis on the author's creativity in complicating this very corseted picture. So I wanted to go through some of those. I don't know how many of my Regency romances I will go through. If I want to go through them all, and I might want to go through them all, then I make plenty of videos. I'm of course not going to be offended if you skip this. So let's start with this one. This is Lord Glenraven's Return. You can see the shift is being made here from a completely painted cover to something like this. Where's Lord Rockley when we need him? Lord Sutherland. This is just two actors, two models, being lightly painted over, and given a painted background, but it's not in any way a composition. And you can see we're starting to shift to that with a cover like this. Here we have a period dress couple. She's wearing something she wouldn't wear during the day, but it doesn't matter. You have a period dress couple here in an old country house library. Probably right off camera is Jason Harrigan going through the shelves saying, "Oh, you're not taking good care of this. Oh, I could make a bundle of this." So what have we got here? Beautiful young widow Claudia Carstairs did not mourn her late husband. That's often a thing that you see, a gambit in these books, is that we will have a very pretty and very young widow, typically married an older man, an uncaring man, a relationship in which there was no love, and the older man's death gives her the position of wealth and influence and independence. And in many, many of these Regencies, these old Regency romances, the young woman is necessarily, understandably, reluctant to yield that independence to anyone else. Every once in a while, in these old Regencies, the old man who died, the first husband who died, will be someone that the young woman loved. And every time that happens, I invariably want to read about that relationship instead of about the lusty new relationship. But anyway, let's see about Claudia. During their brief marriage, she had learned to loathe him. That nightmare ended with his sudden death, and Claudia was left with the freedom she longed for and the estate of Ravencroft that she loved. Now Claudia had to defend her independence and her inheritance from a handsome stranger. This magnetic man of mystery claimed to be Gem January, an impoverished wayfarer seeking a humble job. But one look at the passionate hunger in his gaze, and Claudia knew he wanted much, much more. He will certainly be connected to the estate. He will not be. He'll either be connected to this estate or have an estate of his own. He'll be a lord in hiding or something like that. It's never just an ordinary person in these mysteries, never, or in these romances, never ever. Okay, then the next one is My Cousin Jane by Anne Barbara. Here we have staple visual icons. We have the country. She is not accurately dressed, but he kind of sort of is, except for the wrong colors. And we have an opulent country estate in the background. Miss Jane Birch thought she was merely pursuing a harmless deception when she agreed to pose as the respectably aged and unattractive companion of her cousin, the beautiful and reckless Winifred Timberton. But now Winifred's new guardian, the dauntingly domineering and heart-stoppingly handsome Lord Simon Talent, has unmasked Jane for what she was, a lovely and lively young lady, as reckless in her way as Winifred and no suitable chaperone. All these things you can see right away. You're going to get fun. You're going to get an element of fun. That's another thing I love about these things, is that most of them have pure fun in mind. Every once in a great while you'll encounter a book that is predicated on tragedy, or even rarer, like for instance there's a Regency romance author named Joanna Wolfe who has a tendency to inject genuine politics into her reviews, the state of things in Ireland or whatnot. I think she's one of the very few old-style Regency romance authors who will do that. But not the only one. The one that I'm finishing up today is, I don't know if I have it within reach, but it's all about Lord Elgin and the Elgin marbles. It's all about, he's a character in the book, and you have other characters in the book, including our hero and heroine, arguing about whether he was right to chisel off pieces of the Parthenon and bring them back to England. Very strange, and I must admit, not my favorite. I prefer it when these things are almost fantasies, where there's nothing at stake, where the closest you'll ever brush to history will be a mention of Almack's or one scene in which the Prince Regent makes an appearance. That, to me, that adds to the escapism. Okay, all right, this is a Nancy Butler book, and this is Reclaiming Lord Rockley. And you can see right away a couple of major differences if we gauge these things, so you'll have to pardon the wonkery here. If we gauge these things by their covers, by the way the cover designs change, then you can see two things right away here that are changing from, what did we show you? The Duke's Daughter? This is a painting. This was painted by someone. This is, once again, a painting treated. I think that these might have been too early for any kind of Photoshop, but you know what I mean. Some sort of, these are a painting treated photograph. That's a photograph, not a painting. And one other thing to notice, we've mentioned it before in earlier walkthroughs of these Regencies, is that the relative age of the man and the woman is narrowing. Used to be that the man would be in his early 50s, or in his late 40s, or in his late 30s, and the woman would never be any older than in her early 20s. And now you can see not only are they closer to the same age, but he looks more like a boy. He looks more like a super hottie, like a 20th century super hottie. No one in Regency England looked like that. And if any man had, in the ton, in the upper 1,000 families, if anyone, any young man in that family had started to look like this, he would have changed the way he looked. That would not only have been impossible, it would have been undesirable. But I mean, look at even underneath his period clothing, you've got a Soloflex body. That is not accurate, but it shows a change in the zeitgeist. It shows that the readers of these books, who are, you know, predominantly women, wanted hot young men on the cover. That becomes absolutely universal. I mean, look at this. We've got another one. Yeah, this is Lisa Kleypas. This came out just this year. Okay, that is fairly sedate, fairly ordinary. It's very eye-popping, very colorful. No one in the Regency period would have dressed like that. But, I mean, in those color schemes or in that cut or design. But it looks otherwise fairly normal. But look on the inside. There she is. Goodness gracious. And that... so these covers start in a tame way to reflect that. But let's see here. Lustful Lord Rockley is the talk of the ton. That's T-O-N, not T-O-W-N. That's the best families. He never denied his amorous appetites, but he's furious that people are gossiping about his intimate intrigues thanks to a slanderous newspaper editorial. Newspaperwoman Mercy Tatlock can't believe Rockley had the nerve to file a libel suit against the editor of the Tiptree Trumpet, who just happens to be her very own father. Marshalling all her charm and cunning, she dreams up some deliciously devious tricks to embarrass the rakish lord, tricks that will surely convince him to drop the charges. And of course they won't, but they will convince him that he loves her. And that sounds like a lot of fun. And it sounds, relatively free of the real world. Maybe Nancy Butler would have researched a bit about what it takes to make a newspaper in the Regency period, but maybe that, no more than that. And that's good. That's what Steve likes. If I want to know what it takes to make a newspaper in the Regency period, I'll read about the Regency period. Okay, we have another Nancy Butler. This is another photo cover, and it's another one that, it's the same as Reclaiming Lord Rockley. We have a very much 20th century super hottie male on the cover. No man in the Regency period would have looked like that. And you can note a couple of other variations. For instance, the usual items on offer on these covers are absent. There is no country estate. There is no greenery. There are no Greek statues. There is no opulent home. Instead, we're in a cellar with wine casks. So that's interesting to me. Not to any of you, but to me. Miss Sarah Cobb has accepted a position as a governess at Tregallion House in remote Cornwall. Good Lord, far from London. But while traveling to her new home by coach, the former school teacher receives a cryptic warning from a fellow passenger. The roguish stranger clearly has no qualms about making Sarah ill at ease. Still, she's intrigued by him in spite of herself, even more so when she discovers there's a good deal of truth behind his warnings. And the young rogue will have a connection with Tregallion House, of course, and will fall in love with her. This next one is by Vanessa Gray. We're back to an old style cover, and this is one that I read. I can tell because I reinforced it. This is The Lonely Earl. Sometimes these older ones, the ones that are sort of powdering, sometimes I have to reinforce them with clear plastic tape. I know that's making the book purists and book collectors out there shudder with horror, but these things aren't going to outlast me. So, I'm never going to get rid of them. So why not? Why not make them so that they can stand up to a reading? Whereas, something the same age, this still has the sheen on it. The pages are still relatively clean. The binding is still rock solid. There'd be no reason for me to reinforce this. But if I hadn't reinforced this thing, taking it in and out of a shoulder bag would have destroyed it. And this was really good. Beautiful Faustina Kennett and dashingly handsome Hugh Crail have grown up on adjoining Devon estates. Faustina has fairly worshipped the older Hugh, and Hugh has barely noticed her existence. But now all that has drastically changed. Hugh was back from abroad, having survived a disastrous marriage that left him cynical and cautious towards all the fair sex. Faustina was back from the season in London, having rejected all suitors for her hand, as she refused to humble herself for any man. And this was really enjoyable. I had a little quibble with the title. I usually do. The Lonely Earl is not what I would have titled this at all. But the chemistry between the two of them was terrific. Okay, then we have another Nancy Butler. This is The Discarded Duke. He's not a discarded dupe. He's a discarded duke. Nearly destitute, Ursula Rourke agrees to sell her late husband's bloodstock to the Duke of Ardsley. But the wily widow has ulterior motive in visiting the peer's property in Devon. Again, we're in Devon. She hopes to entice him into marriage. Never does she imagine that a handsome sheep herder will jeopardize her plan and win her heart. William Ridd has spent years breeding the best wool-bearing sheep in England for Ardsley, and he blames Ursula alone for the Duke's decision to replace the flocks with horses. Still, he cannot deny the redhead's tempting charms. So you see what I mean? This Regency will have a little bit of historical research involved in terms of livestock use and changes in livestock use. And we'll just have to see if the author makes it laborious. We'll just have to see. Let's see here. We'll just do a few more of these for today. Okay, this is Allison Lane, A Clandestine Courtship. Again, if you're studying these covers the way I do, I Talmudically study them. For slight variations on the theme, you will see that we are in a period dress and we are in a country setting, and the woman has sedate clothing on. It's possible that she's in a late stage of mourning. But one big difference is that it's just a humble cottage in the background with a water wheel. No big stately country house. It has been many years since James had seen England. The murder of his twin brother had brought him home and shifted the responsibilities of the earldom of Ridgeway onto his own broad shoulders. Saddened by the circumstances of his return, he intends nevertheless to perform his duties, chief among them to identify his brother's killer. There is only one advantage, it seems, to this homecoming, the opportunity once again to gaze into Mary Leighton's bottomless blue eyes. But too much has changed in his years away. The young beauty is now Lady Northrop, the Baron's widow, probably a recent widow from the clothing. Those lovely eyes now look upon him with confusion, perhaps even mistrust. Okay, so they will come to love each other, and the only problem that I might have with this is another one that won't need reinforcing. It's as new as the day it was made. The only problem that I'll have with this is the problem that I often express about the made-up stories, which is their endless fascination with identical twins. I wish that people would get over it. I really do. I wish that there was just some sort of moratorium. You know for sure. I mean, it's a neat twist that the identical twin, the new Earl, has to deal with the fact that everybody around him is reminded of his odious brother instantly by looking at him. That's neat. But you know for sure that the identical twin is going to turn up alive in this book, and that that fact is going to be played off to confuse everyone, including the heroine, right up until the end. And that's lazy. I wish that people would just discard identical twins. I do. Okay, then we'll do one more for today. Okay, this is Ann Barber again. Okay, and once again, you're going to study the cover. You're not going to study the cover. You don't care about these covers, but I do. And you're going to see immediately something out of place. This is Step in Time. And there you have our period costume couple on a picnic with a fishing rod. But in the background, you have someone in 20th century dress. Looks like Rumpole of the Bailey just standing there in the background. And they're not noticing him, and he's noticing them. So something's wrong. It was bad enough that Amanda McGovern's dreams were dashed by the man she adored in the 1990s. Okay, time travel. But romance offered even greater danger when she traveled back in time to Regency London and found herself being kissed by another man's exquisitely exciting but definitely lying lips. And that is a rarity. That kind of thing is a rarity in these old-style Regency romances. The supernatural is almost never invoked. This is, I think, the only one I've ever encountered that has time travel. In these old Regency romances, where I'm talking about Outlander here. And I think I've encountered 2 that have ghosts. Not an old house that's rumored to have a ghost, but an actual ghost as a character. I think I've encountered 2 like that. Otherwise, no. Otherwise the closest thing that these old Regencies come to a largely mythological creature is an Irish member of the peerage. So, but we'll get to those. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now and sit down. But that's just a little more romance, a little more Regency for you. If you don't like these videos, again, you can feel free to skip them. I won't be offended. But I'm going to wrap this up for now. I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.